Minister, Deputy Prime Minister, all state ministers, all diplomatic corps, I mean, one prolonged is a time where Bougainville, one time Papua New Guinea, he continuously stressed him all talk, and I need a Bougainville peace agreement. The Honorable Prime Minister and the co-chair, I wish to firstly thank you for calling this meeting together. Since the last JSB we have had on the 30th of July last year, the issue on the table is the ratification of the referendum results. Ratification, as the word is used by Bougainville Peace Agreement, is the last step to a deal we made with the government of Papua New Guinea more than 15 years ago. The Bougainville Peace Agreement states in the introduction and outline the following words: the outcome of the referendum shall be subject to ratification of the National Parliament. Prime Minister, these words are repeated. Now we're outside of the Bougainville Peace Agreement, not where they repeatedly, particularly the new Part 14 of the Constitution, this was inserted to implement the Bougainville Peace Agreement. The only provision in the Constitution was Section 342, which talks about the process of consultation between the two governments over the implementation of referendum results and a series of steps necessary for the matter to be considered by the Parliament. There is the tabling of the referendum results in the Parliament, the decision of the Parliament, and lastly, the notification of the Bougainville government of the decision of the Parliament. Captured by the words in Bougainville Peace Agreement was the deal we made with the government of Papua New Guinea over the outcome of the referendum. And it was on the basis of this promise by the national government to bring the matter for ratification in the Parliament that we, the Bougainville leadership, committed ourselves to disarm and join the peace process and to achieve our goal of independence through referendum to be held 15 years in the future, where our aspiration as fighters for independence would be tested against the resolve of our people over that same future. Knowing our goal of independence was to be provided for in the Constitution of Papua New Guinea, marked that turning point in the war where I personally made up my mind to join the peace process on behalf of this constitutional pathway would take me and my goal as a fighter. Today I'm here before you not as a fighter, but as a political leader, sitting with you here, Mr. Prime Minister, as the co-chair of the JSB, but an accident of history. My goal is to attain independence through the constitutionally guaranteed process has not left me. Mr. Prime Minister, this is but only a few brief an introduction to bring the core message of my speech today. If the Papua New Guinea Parliament does not understand this background, it will not understand why its role is to were the mere blessings of the outcome of the referendum and nothing else. And that is the brief background of the deal. In our JSB on the 30th of July last year, we took the ratification issue from our technical teams and mandated our two ministers responsible to develop seasonal order, which we decided would be appropriate pathway to bring referendum results to the Parliament. In the JSB resolution, we tasked Mr. Makiba and Mr. Masat to develop the seasonal order and resolve the three key issues relating to the task. And these are the required voting majority necessary to support the discussions of the Parliament, the decisions of the Parliament, 2, the number of sittings required to deliberate on the matter, and 3, the secret voting option put forward by your side. Mr. Makiba also placed a draft seasonal order in the hand of our Attorney General for our consideration. In a matter of a week, we developed our own version of a draft of the seasonal order, which was given to Minister Makiba. Although this task stems from directly the JSB resolution, the two ministers also understood that there were the other matters to attend to. This included the outcome of the consultation that ended up in the Era Corner Covenant, which we subsequently signed following the conclusion of the consultation. A major requirement of the Era Corner was for a joint report to guide the Parliament once a motion for the endorsement of the result was tabled by Minister Makiba to Parliament. So these are the outstanding issues that have remained unresolved as between the two ministers. And on top of the unresolved issue of the required voting majority, we believe we are correct in law to recommend for a simple majority, since the question to the National Parliament to endorse the referendum result is a simple, ordinary motion of Parliament, whilst the national government believes that the consequences of a positive decision for independence of Bougainville necessitates the treatment of the motion for ratification as a bill to amend the Constitution, and therefore by law, in the option of the state solicitor, requires a two-thirds absolute majority in Parliament. Mr. Prime Minister, if we do not believe this particular issue here, JSB is now bound to engage a moderator to address this. The purpose of the JSB, therefore, to provide the green light of a moderator and to task our officials to prepare the necessary documents. In addition, may I also add ABG's viewpoint on extending the scope of the moderator to deal with not just this outstanding issue, but on the other issue concerning the implementation of the JSB resolutions. Since the beginning of the JSB work, not just a dispute settlement body, but a body to provide oversight to the implementation of the JSB resolution. The same issues have appeared time and time on the ABG agenda. The idea of a working moderator who is not involved in the business of either governments is a way forward, and I request that JSB endorses the concept and task the officials to develop a TOR for a working moderator. And also, I wanted to propose, if that moderator from my end should have come from the United States. In one of my previous engagements with you, I made my views to you that your government can take control of the PM's commitments. Now my government has firm position to discontinue the Prime Minister's commitment of 100 million kina per annum to ABG post-2024 and convert the PM's commitment in the 2024 national budget and the 2024 ABG budget into annual RDG for 2024 and arrears. Cocoa levies. One of the matters I would like to bring to your attention is the cocoa levy. I have been informed that your state solicitor has provided advice that Bougainville Agriculture Commodity Regulation Authority has no legal authority to collect the levy fees on cocoa transshipped out of Bougainville. Let me remind Mr. Prime Minister that Section 296 of the National Constitution states that the national laws cease to apply in Bougainville once ABG annexes its own laws. I find this state solicitor's advice misleading based on the assumption that we don't have a law. Mr. Prime Minister, may I come back to the point that I have made in my introduction. There is no point in asking the Parliament to understand the role that they have been asked to perform if we, and I mean the JSB, compromising on those now seated around this table, do not understand the background to the Bougainville Peace Agreement and the deal we made regarding the outcome of the referendum. Mr. Prime Minister, you may recall that you have asked me this question in a meeting we had this year at around the same time that the mass looting were taking place in Port Moresby. You asked, and forgive me if I have not rephrased your question properly. You asked whether it was really necessary to get the Parliament to make a formal decision. If the people have already spoken for independence, say, with all due respect, at the first hearing that from you, I knew that you have, in fact, hit the nail on the head because the hidden wisdom of your question is the lack of understanding we all have of the role intended by the parties in terms of ratification of the outcome of the referendum vote. It goes to the very difficulties that you are grappling with in terms of the effect of the constitutional framework. In alignment with the Bougainville Peace Agreement provisions, what that means for the role of a parliament at the end of this process, I would like to lay out in full what I think was our deal with the national government. That the government of Papua New Guinea will amend the constitution to allow our choice of independence to be put to the people of Bougainville for their formal vote through a referendum 15 years into the future, and that provided that the national government is also entitled to put an alternative choice to the people. The government through the Parliament will bless the outcome of the vote, no matter what the result was. The fact of the matter is that we did not know what the referendum question is and what the results will be, but we have made a deal to accept whatever the referendum outcome is. Mr. Prime Minister, this was the deal we made, and consequently, it is clear that the rationale for engaging the Parliament to exercise its final decision-making authority was not a statement of the supremacy of the Parliament, but the novelty of its supremacy in blessing the work of the Parliament that had approved the amendment and bring out a new constitutional order in Papua New Guinea. Mr. Prime Minister, this is the task we collectively have in the true spirit of the Bougainville Peace Agreement and the Part 14 of the Constitution, which in the preamble to the agreement calls for the joint creation of a solution through the framework of the supremacy and the law of this country. However, before I go further, let me backtrack a bit in history, not into black waters of the inspiration of the people for independence, but at the formation of the Union of the Peoples for the new nation of Papua New Guinea in 1975, when the Constitution came into effect. And on the eve of the independence, John Momis, then a Catholic priest, presented a petition to the United Nations in a form of a letter that requested the United Nations to cause the exclusion of Bougainville from pending union of the former territories under the mandate of Australia since 1945 into a nation of Papua New Guinea. We got no response from the United Nations on that petition. On the coming into effect of the Constitution in 1975, we got a form of autonomy under the Constitution of Papua New Guinea through an ordinary law of the Parliament to resolve the uprising that had occurred in Bougainville, which was resolved through a compromise under the first Bougainville Agreement 1976. This agreement was crafted by some of the world's experts on the matter. However, we have learned from our experience from this experiment that the national government did on Bougainville in terms of a long-term or a lasting solution for Bougainville. The first lesson is that we will never trust the national government. Why? Because in a matter of 10 to 15 years, the deal was swept away and the so-called special status that Bougainville Agreement was but a meaningless phrase. The second lesson we've learned was the words are not sufficient, and that the deal, if it is to be a deal at all, has to be locked in a double entrenchment mechanism to ensure accountability in the future. It is from these lessons that Bougainville Peace Agreement was constructed. It was also from these lessons that the Part 14 was developed by the legislative draftsmen. The uniqueness of the Bougainville Peace Agreement. Mr. Prime Minister, I appeal to all good people of Papua New Guinea to see the course we have pursued in our quest for independence. All of you have to do is read and reread the Bougainville Peace Agreement and see how it was woven into the fabric of the Constitution of Papua New Guinea to not only institute a new constitutional order in PNG's political life, but to protect the deals that were made in Bougainville's peace agreement, including the deal on the ratification of the outcome of the referendum. The uniqueness of the Bougainville Peace Agreement is not only about the promises contained in, but the partnership that was created by the supreme law of Papua New Guinea. The misinterpretation people give to the role of the Parliament stems directly from the lack of understanding and appreciation of the way the Bougainville Peace Agreement works with the Part 14 of the Constitution. The Constitution, through Part 14, protects the deal that was made over the ratification of the outcome of the referendum through the fundamental principles. The first is the intentions of the parties overrides all attempts to legally construct an idea that is being addressed in the implementation of the referendum result. The second is the Part 14 relates only to Bougainville, and it goes without saying that it does not apply to other parts of the country. The third principle is the provisions of the Part 14 overrides any other parts of the Constitution where there is a conflict between the provision of the Part 14 with any other parts of the Constitution. The provision of Part 14 prevails over the other parts of the Constitution. And the last principle is that of double entrenchment, which simply means that before we change anything in Part 14 of the Constitution, you need our prior approval through the House of Representatives. In simple terms, we have a two-key combination master key. Mr. Prime Minister, I wish to repeat my point again. The Parliament cannot be expected to understand the novelty of the deal regarding their role in the process unless those of us around this table understand it absolutely. 2 years ago, I pledged with you to let my people go. I did not pledge with you to get rid of the non-binding nonsense. It is a Western-derived concept, has no place in our tradition. Once you me pass him talk, I must talk by die. All Parliament is asked to do is to give its blessing to a deal made more than 15 years ago. It is not being asked to reject the deal and to manufacture a reason to review anything. Before I conclude, let me say a word or two of our Bougainville members in the Parliament. And I say this with all due respect to them as leaders and representatives of our people in Parliament. Our people expects your full support and commitment to their cause. They have done their part. It is now your part. The last thing that we want to hear is that some of you are scheming around and devising options that undermines our cause, and that is not good for your credibility in the eyes of our people. In conclusion, let me say this. I am committed to the independence of Bougainville. I appeal to our good parliamentarians to understand our cause. And our good members of Parliament, please understand the novelty of the deal we made with the national government and the blessings we require from your decision. Let the deal we made with your predecessors more than 15 years ago come into fruition. Mr. Prime Minister, all that is required under the deal is for you and your government to bless my people with your decision in Parliament, and our countries will be blessed or cursed forever. Before I conclude, I would like to make mention a special verse in Leviticus 25, verse 8. As a country turns into a 50th Golden Jubilee, it requires the country It requires a country's blessings to release their oppressors. With those final remarks, it is a blessing or a curse that we will entertain as we move forward. God bless Papua New Guinea and Bougainville. Thank you.